In tonight's Top Gear, refined muscle from Maserati, the Assetto Corsa, buying a Lotus Cortina, and why you might have to fork out more for driving the firm's car. It's true what they say about Italy and fast cars, you know. Catholicism is only the country's second most popular religion. It's easy to see why. Passion, racing, swarthy blokes in goggles. Few names stir the emotions quite as vigorously as Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti.
Provolone, Parmesan and a quarter pound of Parma ham, please. Oh, obviously the food's absolutely fantastic as well. But that's not actually what I was going to say. What I was going to say was...
Maserati.
Il dentro di questo è bello, sì? Questo sì è bello.
Oh, bisticciamo per andare dentro, dai.
Vedi di qui, no, vedi di qui.
What they're trying to say is that this is the comeback Bambino. The 3200 GT is Maserati's most successful model for years, and to celebrate the fact they've built this, the Assetto Corsa. That's Italian for racing spec. Beautiful, isn't it?
Actually, it's not beautiful. Certainly not beautiful in the way that some old Maseratis are beautiful. Not when you appear to have the snout of a giant mechanical anteater.
But it is massively striking, aristocratic even, all the more so in limited edition Assetto Corsa guise.
Facciamo entrare dentro la macchina.
Non mi piace questo, vedi? Fare come un Toyota.
Ma è tutto l'insieme.
Di fronte sì, qui no. Non mi piace questo.
No, è tutto l'insieme.
No, sei sbagliato.
You know, I think they'll like it. It sits 15 millimeters lower than the standard car, while those huge 15-spoke magnesium alloys give it mega presence.
È vera, è vera.
Just the ticket to create a car so utterly seductive it could tempt even the purest of souls.
Oh, senti questo rumore.
He particularly likes the noise it makes. The 3200 GT sees Maserati roaring away from the wilderness years in some considerable style. It's the sort of car you imagine Frank Sinatra or maybe Dean Martin would have enjoyed. As elegant as a finely tailored Italian suit, but with more than a hint of menace lurking beneath the groomed exterior.
Back in the 60s and 70s, men were men and they told tall tales about wrestling hairy supercars across the mountain ranges of Europe. This Maserati would have fitted right in. Oh, it's suave on the exterior, but it's quite obvious that it was playing truant when it should have been attending charm school. It's not that it's old-fashioned, but it definitely has the potential for good old-fashioned bad boy behaviour. So, Frank Sinatra on the outside, Oliver Reed underneath.
Dove sono le chiavi? Qui c'è le chiavi.
Non lo so.
È bella. Dammi il motore, vedi il motore che c'è in questa macchina. Whoa.
It's no wonder they're impressed. The Maserati is a volcanic performer with 2 turbos and 370 bhp from its 3.2-litre engine. Fast? Of course it's fast! It could get to 60 miles an hour faster than Dino could down a vodka martini.
Shaken or stirred? Well, both. Stirred by this gorgeous black leather interior with its slivers of racing car carbon fibre. But shaken by the overly firm nature of its ride quality, the price you pay for having such a firm suspension setup. I'll tell you what Assetto Corsa really means. Sore backside.
It is a sports car though, so I'll let that go. In fact, that firmer suspension and vastly improved steering mean that this is a car you will fight to get your hands on. Ooh, they're a fiery lot, aren't they? No one makes cars like the Assetto Corsa anymore. No one except Maserati. But nothing lasts forever, and a brand new and more cultured non-turbocharged V8 arrives later this year, which makes this the end of an era. There are smoother, more refined cars available for the £67,950 Maserati asks for the Assetto Corsa.
But as demanding as it is, and even at that stratospheric price, Maserati UK are going to have absolutely no trouble whatsoever selling the 75 cars they've imported. The 3200 GT Assetto Corsa is a real character. Now, that's enough for me, I think. Over now to someone who really understands. Take it away, Frank.
I get no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all. So tell me, why should it be true that I
Non ti
get a
piace?
kick
Oggi la prendo io.
out of you?
Ciao, ci vediamo la prossima volta. Ciao. Ciao.
Tonight, the Top Gear verdict centres on one of America's favourite off-roaders, the Chevrolet Blazer. Available in right-hand drive, but only available at just 7 selected Vauxhall dealerships. From the front, the Blazer's chrome-laden double-decker grille looks very American. But from other angles, it looks like a rather tall yet fairly conventional 5-door estate. The dash and interior are a riot of dark grey. There are enough buttons to launch the space shuttle, the leather is soft, and there's even a compass to help you find your way across the desert. No problems with interior space. It'll swallow 5 burger-loving Yanks and have room for a barbecue in the boot, but there's no 7-seat option. The Blazer has one of the biggest 6-cylinder engines around, a large and lazy V6. It only produces a rather modest 190 horsepower, sufficient to surge you to 60 in just over 10 seconds. The ride and handling are about what you'd expect from a cart horse on leaf springs. But the steering is surprisingly sharp and communicative, and this laid-back driving position and leather-clad wheel put you in the mood to cruise. Of course it's going to guzzle gas, and there's no diesel option. But if that's a problem, there's loads of space for an LPG tank. In any case, with a price tag of between £23,000 and £25,000, the Blazer is excellent value, considering the amount of space and performance on offer. And this top-of-the-range LT Auto comes fully loaded with leather, cruise control and aircon. You'll pay an extra £4,000 for a Land Rover V8 Discovery, another £6,000 for a Volvo Cross Country. For the same money, think more Isuzu Trooper. The Top Gear verdict on the Chevrolet Blazer, limited appeal, gives it a limited 4 out of 10.
Still to come on Top Gear, get away from it all in a real hurry, buying a Lotus Cortina. Why driving the firm's car could soon cost you more. And red-hot roadsters from Mercedes and BMW.
Cars and criminals have always enjoyed a healthy relationship, but none more so than back in the 60s, when the wheels and the wide boys formed legendary bonds. "30 years ago, the working class boys who made good by doing bad drove machines of equally humble origin, but with the same devilish streak. But there was one car in particular that charmed the glitterati and impressed the East End firms like no other legend: the Lotus Cortina.
Its origin was innocent enough, though. Colin Chapman's Lotus was asked to shake off the Cortina's fusty family image. In went some trick suspension and the famous twin-cam engine, and the fast Ford was born. As a saloon car racer, it was unrivaled, sweeping to victories all over the world. But it was the swinging style of Jim Clark which caught the imagination of most. The opposition simply couldn't compete. They crashed, they spun, and crashed again. all in a bid to keep up with the heroic Brit.
Jim Clark made it famous, but another man made it notorious.
1963 wasn't just the year the Lotus Cortina was launched. It was the year of the Great Train Robbery, the largest and most audacious crime Britain has ever seen. With military precision, 17 men stole the equivalent of £40 million from the Glasgow to Euston mail train. The man who masterminded the job, Raymond Ettridge, alias George Rachel, alias Keith Miller, alias Bruce Reynolds, was sentenced to 25 years. And now on the right side of the bars, Top Gear has tracked him down to reunite Bruce with the Lotus Cortina he drove at the time.
It's a very attractive car, but it's quite plain. And it certainly didn't cause any attention. Obviously, there's certain things when you're practicing thief, let's say, that you don't want to arouse suspicion. Most people thought it was just a bog standard Cortina. I'd always been mindful of the old train robber Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, you know. He always espoused the thing that you always have the best horse flesh you can.
Right.
This had the best horsepower that I could get at the time. It was bought for the train robbery. I used it most nights when I went up there for reconnaissance purposes. Beautiful territory for driving around, you know, it's the Chilterns.
Yeah, it's a lovely place.
And I had overnight vigils on trackside, and I used to park it up 3 fields away. I had a camouflage netting, we used to peg out over it. I had some really great drives coming home because obviously the train came in to Leighton Buzzard just after 3 o'clock. And I'd sort of leave there about 4 o'clock. Of course, it was a good blast from coming back down via High Wycombe to, I was living at Putney at the time, and I did it in an hour one night.
Really?
Quite hairy, yeah.
No speed cameras around then?
No. I mean, that's what might be termed the good old days for sporting motorists. Brilliant car, and of course, it's quite unique in so much it's only done 3,000 miles.
There's a good reason for that, though, isn't there? Bruce?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically it was confiscated by the police, who held it for virtually, I think, the 5 years that I was on the run. And then, of course, when I was arrested, I signed it over to them as some sort of reparation. They, in turn, put it in an auction where it was bought by Colin Chapman, the very guy who designed it.
Funny how things come around. And you know what? I couldn't resist taking the Cortina out for a spin around its old East End stomping ground.
0 to 60 in 9.9 seconds might not sound like it could dust the 5.0 nowadays, but back in the 60s, it felt like a rocket ship. Like all Lotuses, even today, the Cortina isn't just about raw power, it's about handling. And this car feels like it's bristling to be put through its paces. You know, I'm constantly amazed by old cars. This one still feels really fresh. Feels tight and tidy, the handling is absolutely spot on. And it makes you feel a little bit devious. I think I've got the tail.
If we've whetted the appetite for all you lovable rogues out there who fancy a Lotus Cortina for yourself, here's what to look for. Genuine cars have a special birthmark. Check for this hump that's spot welded into the boot. You should also look for rust around the suspension turrets, headlamp cowls and wheel arches. Original cars should have lightweight panels on the doors, roof and bonnet. Listen, steel, aluminium. When Bruce Reynolds' car was auctioned off along with the rest of his possessions, it fetched a whopping 38.5 grand. That might seem like daylight robbery, but don't worry. Less notorious cars are a lot cheaper. Concours winners fetch about 20,000 quid, whilst clean ones can be found for around 10. You could always opt for a Mark II, which ran from 1967 to 1970. They're more reliable, slightly quicker, but less desirable and therefore more affordable.
Be warned, though, Lotus Cortinas are good at making themselves scarce and could take a few years to track down. Now, where have we had that before?
Loads of people in this country have to buy their own cars, scrimping and saving to get their hands on something that's inevitably going to break down from time to time, wear out its tyres, drink loads of petrol, and generally drain the bank account. Annoying, isn't it?
Especially when there's loads of other people smugly driving around in cars that they've had bought for them by their companies. They have never had to save up the pennies. They get free servicing, free petrol, and when the ashtrays are full, the company gets them a newer model.
Still, at least they get bigger bills.
Tax bills, that is. You see, people who have to use their car a lot for business are taxed a little for the pleasure. And people who use their company car a little, well, they're taxed a lot.
Now, I know that this is a complex subject, and that those of you who don't actually have a company car are perhaps toying with the idea around about now of flicking over to BBC One to check out that drama featuring the ginger girl who used to be in EastEnders. But this is relevant to you, or let me put it this way. Today, the company car. Tomorrow, your car.
So what does all this mean?
If you've got a company car and complete less than 2,500 miles a year on business, the tax charge is 35% of your car's list price. Clock up between 2,500 and 17,999 miles and the charge drops to 25%. Rack up more than 18,000 miles in a year and you'll pay just 15%.
Got that? Right, forget it again.
Because from April next year, your business mileage will be irrelevant. When it comes to taxation, the only thing you'll need to worry about will be this: carbon dioxide.
So why the change?
Well, according to lots of scientists, CO2 is a major environmental problem and is heating the world and melting the polar ice caps. Even though lots of other scientists think that CO2 does nothing more than cause plant growth.
Anyway, the government is absolutely committed to reducing CO2 emissions, so we've all got to go along with it too.
How does it work?
If your company car emits 165 grams per kilometre of CO2 or less, your tax charge will be 15% of your car's list price. Then for every 5 gram increase, the tax goes up by 1% to a maximum of 35%.
Got that? Right, forget it again.
Because each year the goalposts will move. In 2003 the starting threshold will drop, and in 2004 it'll drop even further to get us all driving cleaner cars.
Okay, so there's rather a lot to take in, and the chances are that your brain is hurting about as much as mine is. So, let's have a little break and remind ourselves how horribly polluted our world is. Lovely. Right, time to pay attention again.
To compare the old and new systems, we'll use this Mondeo Z-Tech S as an example, a car that'll send many a rep's pulse racing. Under the new system, the CO2 emissions for this car equate to a 29% tax charge, which equates to a bill of £1,218. Perk drivers, the ones who don't need a car for their work and used to, quite rightly, be the most penalised, stand to gain the most. Their tax bill in this Mondeo would drop by £200. And our high mileage drivers in this Mondeo, who it can be safely assumed couldn't do their job without a car, will have to pay double the tax under the new system.
So what does all this mean?
Well, the new system will doubtless encourage a whole lot more low mileage users into the scheme, previously put off by the stinging 35% tax charge, but now likely to find a lower charge with the right motor. But those of you who cover big miles each year have some serious thinking to do. Your tax charge is likely to go up substantially, and there's nothing you can do about it. Either take it on the chin, or ask the boss for a raise, or opt out of the company car system altogether.
But for once, it's diesel drivers who are going to be having the last laugh, despite a 3% surcharge to take account of all the horrible stuff they chuck out. Because they produce substantially lower CO2 than their petrol-powered equivalents, they're going to attract a lower rate of tax. The pendulum continues to swing.
Coming up on Top Gear, turning up the heat, high-octane roadsters from Mercedes and BMW, and news of what's been going on in the car world.
Road
Roadsters are bought primarily for a healthy dose of fresh air posing. Drivers enjoy cruising around, making sure everyone sees them. It doesn't really matter how fast they go, just as long as owners feel their money has been well spent.
It seems mad then that Mercedes asked AMG to beef up its SLK, and bonkers for BMW to give its M Roadster more power, doesn't it? Nah.
BM have shoehorned the 3.4 straight 6 from the new M3 Coupe to give this top-notch Z3 an extra 4 brake horsepower. It's not a massive increase, and the engine isn't as powerful as it is in the Coupe. That's because the Roadster's exhaust couldn't be made long enough to release all those horses. So here we have just 325 brake. Dandy by me.
Everything about this car is so immediate. Touch the throttle and it just goes. 62 miles an hour takes just 5.3 seconds, but the top speed is restricted to 155 miles an hour. But this car is more about pulling power than flat-out speed. Fifth gear acceleration is phenomenal. And as for the gearbox, well, you just glide through the gate. It's lovely. The faultless engine is matched to a faultless rear-wheel drive chassis. Yes, there's traction control for those who aren't big risk takers, but for those who are, well, you can turn it off. A brave move or just a plain stupid one, but either way, it is damn good fun. Oh yes. This steering wheel does seem a tad on the big side, but when you're trying to control those 17-inch tyres, oh, it's good to have something substantial to hang on to. BM do make their cars with the driver in mind, which is why the centre console has been angled slightly to face you. It's all ergonomically sound in here, but on the outside, the car doesn't look as fantastic as it drives. If you're in the market for a premium postmobile, bring on the SLK.
I've never been a massive fan of this car's slightly feminine looks, but there's no denying that many people rate the SLK as one of the most graceful and elegant machines on the planet.
And of course it has a hood that is still a minor work of genius.
Even though once you've stowed it away in the boot, you're only left with room for a toothbrush. It's taken a fair few years for AMG to bosh their badge onto an SLK, and I'm not sure it's been worth the wait, though they have managed to squeeze 349 brake horsepower from the 3.2 litre, which lops almost 2 seconds off the standard 320's race to 60. At 5.2 seconds then, it's a whisker quicker than the BMW.
The supercharged V6 hasn't got the BMW's hardcore edge to it, both in terms of noise and power delivery, and you can't hang on to each gear for quite as long. The automatic box isn't a bad one. You can leave it in drive to potter around or pop it into the semi-automatic mode, so at least you have some sort of control. Where the BMW feels light and agile, the Mercedes feels heavier and a bit more reluctant to play ball on an empty airfield. Oh, you can still have fun in it though.
But if you really want to turn heads, then you need to trot out onto the public roads.
Give the interior the once-over, and it's obvious that the designers have spent most of their time creating the exterior. The dash and the dials sit bolt upright. It's all function and no flow. The seats were made for mightier bodies than mine, and they don't give enough support for me.
The standard equipment list, which includes this Buffon protecting rear screen, is certainly healthy, but you might feel unwell when you sign the cheque for the expected price tag of 47 grand.
Yes, that's £11,000 more than the BMW, and it's just not worth it. The AMG 32 is an enticing improvement on the standard model, and it has the looks that many lust after, but it lacks soul.
The BMW has bags of it, a super involving roadster that's just mad and bad. And despite its unconventional looks, it's the car I'd like to be seen in.
Oh dear. It seems the UK is still significantly more expensive than elsewhere in Europe when it comes to buying cars. The European Commission have just published the results of their most comprehensive survey to date. And when you examine pre-tax prices for 52 of the 81 models tested, the UK recorded the biggest numbers. Luxury gear like Mercedes, Audi and BMW remain reasonably competitive, but this report is certain to spark off another summer of discontent. However, there is one big up for Britain, as yet again British workers show Europe the way home. After a continental-wide survey of car factories, the Nissan plant in Sunderland has been named the most efficient, producing 101 cars per employee last year. And in second place was Toyota's Derby plant, where each employee made 86 cars. Impressive stuff. But still a way off the world record. Those toiling chaps at Daewoo in Korea once managed to churn out 165 motors each. Now, talking of efficiency, Volkswagen have proved once again that when it comes to diesel technology, they lead the way. The little Lupo 3-litre has just set a new fuel economy record. After being driven for more than 3,500 miles around Britain's coastline, a team of experts squeezed a magical 114 miles to the gallon average out of the advanced diesel engine. The rise of the oil burner continues. You know what they say? There's naught as queer as folk. Despite the British weather being wet one day and even wetter the next, an amazing 47,000 cabriolets was sold in 2000. Why is that amazing? Because it's more than the French, Spanish and Italians bought put together. And now, a caution for surfers. Beware of the prices quoted on internet car buying sites. According to independent monitors, Car Price Check, consumers could end up paying 20% more than the originally advertised price. There are often hidden administration fees and delivery charges, whilst 2/3 of the manufacturer's recommended retail prices quoted were incorrect. And getting the cars to European spec can often cost up to a further £1,000. You have been warned. And finally, bad news for show fans. This year's British Motor Show Earls Court has been called off. It's looked a bit shaky ever since most of the major manufacturers pulled out. The show organisers blame the global economy, whilst the manufacturers blame the huge expense of building a stand. Looks like we'll all have to wait until the NEC next year. Never have people looked forward to visiting Birmingham so much.
Next week, Top Gear is all about value for money. We trade a family saloon for a second-hand supercar. And find one car to do the job of three with just £5,000 to spend. Find out how to get your money's worth in next week's value-added Top Gear special.
Next tonight on BBC Two, a brand new series, Ancient Apocalypse.